What was that?
All good. Little spill. Get it cleaned up real quick. All good.
It's all right, man.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We got another great episode this week. The usual crew with us this time. We got Show on one end, aka, like I say, Johnny two times.
What up?
And Brendan, say what's up to the people.
Hello, hello. Happy to be back.
And without further ado, we're getting into our topic this week, and that's Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales. Because, oh boy, we got a doozy coming on the horizon.
The Insomniverse, as they call it.
And it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about this. I mean, there's a lot when it comes to Spider-Man. Obviously, you got the comics, which could tie into this. We do know that they're making Wolverine in the future, which is going to be a whole different story. We got to definitely discuss that on another episode, but hyped as hell for a Wolverine game to be made by Insomniac.
Yeah, that's going to be... I mean, I know we haven't seen any footage or anything for it, but I am beyond hyped for that. I mean, I think of any character to move on to after Spider-Man for Insomniac, I think Wolverine is the perfect choice.
That's my personal favorite hero too. So
yeah.
I mean, we also got to speak on the fact that it's not just about Wolverine. This, like you said, Brendan, this encompasses the X-Men now. This means that the X-Men exist, that they should exist in this Insomniverse as well. So there's a lot of potential here for what Insomniac is doing. I don't know to what extent Insomniac has in terms of licensing rights to what characters they have and things like that. That's obviously up in the air. It's not really known. It's a secret, but there is a lot of hype around the fact that they're doing this because who knows who they could include, right? So that brings us to our first topic in terms of the thoughts and predictions we have for Spider-Man 2. Obviously taking place after the events of Miles Morales. Where, you know, Miles had to take the mantle of Spider-Man, of the only Spider-Man in New York for a game.
I promise to do everything in my power to protect this city. I promise. That's it?
That oath a real thing?
Totally. Definitely didn't just make it up. See you in a few weeks, Spider-Man. New York's only Spider-Man.
I'm New York's only Spider-Man. I'm New York's only Spider-Man. Please don't screw this up.
Peter's on vacation.
I believe he fought the Tinkerer, correct? That was the main enemy in Miles Morales.
Yeah, that was his friend.
Miles Morales, Brendan. What were your thoughts on Miles Morales?
Oh, I mean, I loved it. I mean, I the only thing that disappointed me was just that it wasn't longer, to be honest, because like it was such a good game, and I mean, obviously it was a reduced price, so like it wasn't like super upsetting that it was a shorter game.
DLC, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it was so good, and like the combat was so fluid and so amazing, and the addition of Miles' powers, you know, the electric powers, was such a good addition. Though they did it so well,
and acrobatics in the sky more too while you're swinging.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a very good, like, you know, hometown hero kind of story. It was just very, I really enjoyed it. And like, you know, the whole relationship between him and the Tinkerer being like, you know, friends and stuff, and like, you know, I don't know, that stuff's always kind of entertaining. So I enjoyed it a lot. You know, probably like just much. I don't know if like it's necessarily better than Spider-Man PS4, but I would say they're like pretty much on par with one another. You know, they're both fantastic games.
I would say in terms of obviously length and depth and content, obviously, you know, Spider-Man 2018 had those 3 chapters of the city that never sleeps. They had Tombstone, they had Black Cat, and they also had Hammerhead. So they had all 3 of those, that DLC included afterwards. For Spider-Man 2018. So if you look at the depth that Spider-Man 2018 had, I guess that's where it has the edge. But then you look at Miles Morales, you look at the graphics upgrade on PS5. I mean, a lot of people say that it wasn't that much of a graphics upgrade because at the end of the day, they still had to cater to PS4. At first, everyone thought it was coming out for only PS5, which was a huge disappointment when they announced that it was coming out for both. But wow, ended up being super beautiful game.
Yeah,
And-
absolutely. If you watch the comparisons, you can pretty much see that there is a decent difference. The only thing I did not like about the remaster was I do not like Peter's new face. I do not like. I liked the original.
You
from
like
the beginning.
that?
I don't like it. I don't know why it doesn't
it's
look. It doesn't look.
childish, right?
The other guy, the other face to me like looked like it matched the voice and matched what I would imagine Peter Parker could look like. You know what I mean? But like the other face just to me does not look like. I don't know. I don't see that face and think Peter Parker. I don't know. It just. I don't know.
Especially there was one particular scene in Miles Morales, where it kind of was really off-putting, and it was a scene right before Peter goes to Europe, and he's telling Miles that, hey, you know, you're gonna take the mantle, and he takes off his mask. They're kind of just sitting there talking with their costumes on, and it's really jarring, his face on that costume, because it just doesn't fit in a way with that all that muscle that he has and all that you know that fullness that Spider-Man has, and then he's got this face up top that's just really childish and looks like it's a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old. I agree with you. I did like the first game's Peter better, and if you actually look at some articles online, the actual voice actor was disappointed that they changed the face, because they apparently didn't even tell him that they were going to change it for the remaster. They just did it. But in this case, I guess it was a bad design choice, but it's there to stay. And at the end of the day, now we got to look at the gameplay. And with Miles Morales, that's what came with it, was a more fleshed out, deep, customized gameplay for a character that a lot of people don't really know a lot about. I mean, Miles Morales is one of the more beloved Spider-Man in the universe.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of being more mainstream, because he got his own game.
In the movie, into the
Yeah, in the movie too.
Yeah, you guys are right. The Sony movie that came out, the animated movie, was the one that really put him out there in the spotlight. Yeah. There were, if it is a surprise to people, but there were plenty of people who didn't really know who Miles Morales was, or what his backstory was, or what his abilities are, or what he's involved in, until that Sony movie came out, and then obviously Insomniac's Miles Morales game. So what do you guys think about what Miles Morales brought to the universe and what it can do for Spider-Man 2? Because it really changed a lot.
It's like a lot of people that were fans about Miles Morales, like, it did him justice. You know, they did it right, from everything with the gameplay and fluidity of like his fighting style too. Because when you add all his powers into that, it's like it's a completely different style. You know, he had all the electric stuff. He could turn invisible and everything. And I feel like it played very well. So moving forward is like they did him justice. They did the culture of him too. Like, perfect, you know? Yeah, like his culture and his background. And that's what ties into a lot of his character too. Because when they first announced Miles Morales, I won't forget it. Because like, I remember my friend told me, he was like, yo, they're making a new Spider-Man and he's like black and Puerto Rican. And then I was like, oh, that's cool, you know what I mean? And he basically gave him like the whole black and red suit was fire and all that. And it just, I feel like the representation did numbers on it, because we already got Peter Parker representing New York, but he's like, you know, like the city, like Manhattan area. Yeah, and Queens.
Know, that's another gripe I had with the first game, if there was one to have. I hope that in the next game, with more power that they have, making the game from the ground up for PS5, they incorporate the whole city, maybe, right? I feel like nowadays maps are so big and so detailed. You look at the Elden Ring that just came out, you got all this ability to really create a fully fleshed out New York City. They gotta incorporate Queens into this, because you have Spider-Man swinging through Flushing Meadows Park, right?
Probably harder to swing.
In this original Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire movies, Sam Raimi verse, you know, him living in Queens in those houses out there, where they were, you know, the houses that they all look the same. They got the small concrete back, small gate around.
See, that's
Queens, right? Like, we need that.
Right, but that's what I was gonna get to. That. See, like, speaking of that Spider-Man in his verse, you see those houses. They look like, I guess you could say, suburban to us in New York. That's kind of suburban, you know, to an extent. Because, you know, you got the 2 floors, especially in the city. Like, it's really hard to get a house like that. 2 floors, driveway, all of that. So when they represented Miles, it's like, that's kind of a really authentic apartment that he's in, you know? Like, his apartment, that's really how New York apartments look. Where it's like, really, is very straightforward and very thin. And growing up in that area, you know what I'm saying? It's a great representation, and you feel closer to that character.
Yeah. The thing I will say about, you know, Peter and the lack of them going to Queens and whatnot is you got to think about what point in time these games take place in Peter Parker's life. Like he lived in those houses in Queens when he was in high school, growing up with Aunt May until he moved out and moved into Manhattan. You know what I mean? That's when he moved into that apartment, and then he didn't move back to Queens until him and MJ got married and have a daughter. In the comics at least, he doesn't move back there until then. So at that point in time, I guess there's not much. I mean, I guess realistically, yes, if he was fighting crime in all of New York City, he would probably go to Queens. But also, there's not as many tall buildings to swing off of. So over there, actually, the further inland or closer to Long Island you get. So
but then again, I do want to bring up the fact that Insomniac mastered one of the main things that I thought would be a problem with them really trying to tackle web swinging the way that they were. When they were really just discussing all the mechanics they were putting into it before the game came out, was how they would handle Central Park, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just this gaping hole at the end of the day in the city when it comes to swinging off these tall buildings. It's like, how would they handle it? And boy, did they master swinging through Central Park. It's honestly one of the more fun areas to swing through in the city. Catching a tree branch and swinging close to the ground and having that angle, really farther out.
Yeah, or light poles.
The momentum was really, really good. And then they had, a lot of the stonework that you could swing off of too. And then they were able to put the bases in there with Silver Sable, yeah. Silver Sablinova, as she's called. They really were able to incorporate, even putting the bases in Central Park, right? To make it, give you something to do there as well. Yeah. So I guess that brings us into the topic of, moving on from the Spider-Man 2 thoughts and predictions, but brings us more into the topic of how do they treat a lot of the side things that they're going to put into Spider-Man 2, right? We remember one of the best superhero games to ever grace our screens was Batman Arkham City, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Arkham Knight as well, but a lot of people harken back to Arkham City as the pinnacle of the Arkham
I would agree.
games.
I would agree with that.
And one of the main things that really helped it wasn't just the main missions and everything, but it was the fan service, right? It was all the locations that they put into the game. It was all the little side content where you were able to find a lot of side enemies and have these side quests and actually face them at the end of those side quests, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was really deep in a way. Now, granted, they did do this in Spider-Man 2018. They had the Sanctum Sanctorum in there. They had Avengers Tower. They had a lot of places, a lot of landmarks. It was one of the main focal points, right? Go around, take pictures of all the landmarks. But there was no depth to it, right? So how do we incorporate some of these other maybe villains or other side quests? What would you guys like to see maybe them tackle in Spider-Man 2?
Well, I mean, I know they've already obviously confirmed Venom is going to be in the game. But I also believe, from what I understand, Kraven is also expected to be in the game. Kraven the Hunter.
I actually have a list of them. I'll name them off in a second, but you go ahead.
Oh yeah, but I was just going to say, I mean, I would love to see some sort of, I don't know. I mean, one of Kraven's most notorious and one of the best Spider-Man storylines in general from the comics is Kraven's Last Hunt, and where Kraven is hired to kill Spider-Man basically, and it's like this real like drawn out long night, like suspenseful comic storyline where like Kraven is like hunting Spider-Man, and I think that would be like an interesting, something to adapt, in some sort of way.
Would like them to incorporate maybe some of the comic storylines as side missions, right?
Yeah, exactly, or like riffs on them or something,
man. And if maybe they could really stick to the source material and just put some of these adventures on these little side areas, side quests where you could at the end then face Kraven. So I actually have a list here of all the rumored villains that are gonna be in the game. Obviously, this is tentative. This is up for debate. This is not confirmed in any way. But there is a leak that had come out, I believe it was about a month back, a little less, that included Kraven the Hunter, Venom, Mysterio, Lizard, and more, right? So these are some of the main, and of course including Electro. Then you also have Rhino. You have all the original bosses that you had in the first game, which are obviously still going to be around.
Norman Osborn, I guess, right?
Norman Osborn, obviously, teased at the end of Spider-Man 2018 as possibly becoming Green Goblin. There's Harry. Obviously, he's oversees the entirety of the first and Miles Morales. His role in all this, does he somehow play into the Black Green Goblin that we saw in Spider-Man 3 further down the line, possibly in a Spider-Man 3 game?
Yeah, the new Goblin or whatever they call him.
Yeah, the Hobgoblin.
The
The
Hobgoblin,
Hobgoblin is a different character.
yeah, he's different.
really?
He's
Oh,
Yeah, it is.
one.
Actually, funny enough, if you guys watch the Spider-Man, like the MCU movies, Ned Leeds, like the Spider-Man's best friend in those movies. In the
Yeah.
comics, I think Ned Leeds is like the third version of the Hobgoblin or something like that. In the comics, like he becomes a
So happy
Hobgoblin
you
down
know
the
that.
line.
There's
Yeah,
so many people that don't realize that Ned has a different place other than the comic relief in this
Yeah.
universe. It's pretty, and now especially that has all been reset with the events of No Way Home.
spoiler.
Really opens the door for him to have maybe even a bitter story added to him, where he ends up being a
Yeah.
villain.
Well, that was like kind of like the joke in No Way Home when like Toby was talking about how like he's like, oh, my friend Harry. He's like, I have my best friend because I remember he asked him, he's like, do you have a best friend? And he was like, yeah, I did, but he tried to kill me. He tried to kill me, and then he died in my arms. And then Ned's like, oh my god. He's like, I promise never to like betray you or whatever. And that was kind of like a joke because there is a version of him in the comics that becomes Hobgoblin and tries to kill him. So it's funny,
Yep. So if the enemies that I've listed, right? Lizard, Electro, Mysterio, which I'm so excited for what Mysterio could be. But of all those enemies that we've named, which one you most excited about, man? I mean, there's a lot of excitement around these guys.
I mean, once you started naming them, I instantly thought about Sinister Six. You know what I mean? Because that's what it feels like. They're just building that.
Multiple versions of the Sinister Six.
Oh yeah, it's just another iteration. Yeah.
Multiple iterations of the Sinister Six. At times, it just feels like they just grab 6 enemies and just call them that, even though they don't call themselves the Sinister Six. But a lot of times, fans will just put that label on them if there are like 6 enemies in the game.
Well, to answer your question about like those villains, I mean, obviously, you already know who I'm gonna pick, bro. You always got to go back to the OGs, and they got to be Venom.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, when he showed up, man, and you just like, yes.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that I feel like as of late, Venom's kind of been viewed more as like an anti-hero than like a villain, and I feel like this game seems, from like what I've seen, just from that trailer, just seems more villainous than an anti-hero. I mean, I honestly, a part of me would love, and even like hopes, I've kind of heard there's some rumors about it that we get to play as Venom at some point. Like that would be awesome.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, like that would be sick.
Well, think about it. Venom is in the Insomniverse.
Yeah.
Don't rule out Insomniac making a Venom game in the future in the Miles Morales vein, where it's a side game, a $40 game, $50 game, where it's just him. It's a short story, but hey, go to town in New York City as Venom, have fun, right?
Yeah, I'm sure people would like that.
Of course,
it's gonna be very, very.
I think the last Spider-Man game that I remember that did that was Ultimate. No. Spider-Man Ultimate was like the only one that I remember where you can actually beat Venom and just wild out.
I remember now. I remember because I do know that there's a Spider-Man game. I believe is it Web of Shadows, or
you could play it, yeah. And Web of Shadows you play as
Spider-Man with the Venom suit.
Yeah.
You had the Venom powers, but yeah, you're right. And you know the Insomniac's gonna pull from some of those old games, right? In terms of the combat that they have. Now, you bringing up Venom, one of the villains that I am excited for to be included in this universe at some point, especially because we are talking about Sony here, right? So I'm excited. He's not on this list, but I'm excited for Carnage. And I really have a genuine feeling that he could show up in Spider-Man 2 as a sort of other villain that maybe shows up at the end or maybe shows up at the beginning.
Well, it's oh, my bad. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if we get Venom, there's definitely a chance we get Carnage because Carnage is the spawn of Venom. But also, like, we also could be at a point in Spider-Man's career where he are. Well, I don't know. The way it's hard to tell by the way the trailer was phrased, like if there's any history between Spider-Man and Venom. So who knows? But like maybe he already faced Venom and Carnage before, and Carnage is already known.
He seems to.
Yeah, it did seem like that to me. But also, like, that's what's weird that like he'd be that old. Already involved with Miles the first time meeting Venom. I don't know. That's kind of like.
Then again, this whole universe is played out completely different in a way.
That's true. Because even meeting Doc Ock was late. You're right. That is true.
Yes. So in terms of, I think he's 27, I believe, at the time at the first game, right?
Yeah.
He's definitely older, more experienced.
He's been Spider-Man for like 12 years or something like that. Yeah, like 10 years, 12 years.
So he's definitely, further along. So I do understand that he's a little older, but I feel like they're really going to try to throw everything in the kitchen sink at Spider-Man in this next game. And it's mainly going to be because he has his counterpart next to him in Miles Morales.
Thank you! You're welcome! Don't scare baby! wishes I was locked behind 30 feet of steel. I intend to enjoy this one. He's a menace. Too soft. He's a low-energy menace. Too easy. Maybe he's a weak-minded. Oh!
Hey, Jonah, looking good. Very festive.
Menace! A feckless, treacherous, unhinged menace!
And he's going to play a humongous role, even at some point, I believe, a baton passing role in terms of they're going to, remove Spider-Man at some point. Maybe even Spider-Man gets hurt. I mean, we remember when, I forgot which Spider-Man game it was. I think it was...
Was it like Edge of Time or something like that?
Edge of Time. Yeah, it was Edge of Time where... Spider-Man in the trailer, Spider-Man's killed, right? And one of the other Spider-Men is carrying him.
999.
Was carrying him dead, right? Or just really severely hurt. So I think we're gonna see a situation like that where Miles is a little bit more inexperienced, and Peter's still going to be taking a load of things, and he might take on the heavier enemy, which might be Venom in the beginning of the game, and we might then again still have to play as Miles for a period of time until Spider-Man does his Goku recovery thing and
give him a sense
a little bit and comes back. So there's a lot of dynamic here when it comes to the next game. It's really hard to predict where it's going to go because they're still very early. I believe they said 2023 they're looking at a release, late 2023.
Yeah, it's still a ways away.
It's a ways away, and we're happy about that because what does that mean? It's not coming out on PS4. Like, damn it, stop doing it. Like, stop doing the cross gen. Like, let's go PS5, right? And that's what they said. So, yeah, it's a ways away. From judging from that first scene in the trailer, or the only scene in the trailer, when he comes out, when Venom comes out of the darkness, right? You finally get to see the design of Venom, right?
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that design? How do you guys love the fact that it's so close to the source material, or did you feel like they could have done a little bit more? I think it's perfect.
No, yeah, I was gonna say I think it's perfect, especially because of the the way they have the Venom. I mean, the Venom design of like the Tom Hardy movies. Like, he doesn't have the symbol on his chest, so it looks kind of like overall, like, it looks good, but overall, it definitely is like a bit different than the comics.
Right.
So I think it's good to see a very like even the design of the eyes looks like exactly like the comics, and like the voice is very like low and growly and just
I love that.
voiced by Tony Todd, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah. Who the Candyman, if anyone knows that movie, legendary. He's been in a lot of other stuff. He's been in a lot of other stuff, but that's probably one of his most notable roles.
Very rightfully so. Nice. He deserved it. I look at this casting in a way kind of reminds me of what it was for Christopher Judge to get cast as Kratos, right? Yeah. You wouldn't expect it because they're just they just haven't really been involved in it. But then when you hear them in it, and you're like,
it fits.
Damn, it just fits. It was perfect. It was like, all right, let's go. We're ready. Bring Venom on. You guys remember, like, again, I keep going back to the Arkham games because they have so much influence. As much as people might not see it, but they have so much influence on these Spider-Man games. And especially with this one coming up. Now that Miles and Peter are both featured in this game, they're going to be team up moments and team up moves, right? So you guys remember when it came to Nightwing, it came to Robin, it came to Catwoman in the Arkham Knight game, right? They incorporated some team up moves where you would have a finisher with both of them involved. Sometimes they would set up a fighter, enemy for you, and you press a button and you do some sick move, right? We're going to see a lot of that in this game coming up. So what are some things that you guys would like to see? Would you guys like to see that see them incorporated in boss fights? Maybe in like some side fights with some thugs or something like that, because that's going to be a feature. Team up moves.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see that. I think I would like to see that. I mean, probably both, honestly, obviously both, but like more so in the boss fights. I feel like that could be a lot more, epic and like, cool, a lot more cinematic too for the big, climactic boss fights throughout the game. You know what I mean? To have some team up stuff like that.
Right.
I was just going to comment and say that it makes sense you're talking about Arkham games a lot because the combat systems are very similar. I feel like.
Right. Why is a counter? Even though it's really, no, there aren't. Are there counter? There are no counter moves in Spider-Man. It's not a counter. Dodge, right?
Would you count like his?
Well, I guess like when you do the dodge, like when you have like the blue spider sense above your head and you like
dodge, right?
Yeah, then you kind of like combat their move right there.
They incorporate something like that, a counter mechanic where Spider-Man, you let the enemies also come at you and you press triangle and you counter their moves, and that incorporates a whole layer.
Well, I think it's more of a manual counter though.
Right, the dodging it incorporates
Yeah, and then
fast
like you
perspective.
dodge, and then you decide if you want to counter or not. You know.
Right, or use your tech, or use your your powers and all that.
Right. So
There's a lot.
I was thinking like now that you say like there's like two Spider-Man and you could have team up moves. It'll be very. I don't think they'll be able to do it, but it would be dope if it was to be online and you could play a co-op, but so it's not too easy with two Spider-Man. They gotta like up the ante where it's like a new game plus type deal, where they make the enemies more
The enemy
difficult.
power.
Yeah, they increase the enemy's power, like health and damage. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah,
make them more stronger.
should.
So if there's two of you guys, like one person can play Miles, obviously the other one's Peter, but it's two completely different play styles regarding their power sets.
Yeah.
I can definitely see that. So, and also, you guys gotta remember, because I really do agree with what Brendan was saying about how maybe at some point, Venom is even included in the gameplay. Do we see maybe a section where, like I said, I really feel like Carnage is gonna show up, and I think
Right.
that Venom may take that anti-hero role that he's more known for lately, and maybe just join sides with Peter and Miles, especially with Miles. Miles is he's a very innocent character in terms of he sees the good in everyone, right? And Peter tends to see the good in everyone too, but he's more quick to condemn someone and deal with them, as opposed to I
Right.
could definitely see Miles in a certain light where he's always going to see the good, right? He did it with Finn up until the very end. Even though Peter did it with Dr. Octopus, there did come a point where he was like, all right, I gotta handle this. And you kind of felt with Miles Morales, you felt like there was never really that point where Miles wanted to go for the kill and go for the ending of it. He always, even while he was at the reactor and wanting to sacrifice himself in a way, he always wanted to see the good in Finn. So maybe he does something like that with Venom. He appeals
Right.
to whoever plays him, Tom, whatever character is playing
Tony Todd.
no, Tony Todd's the voice actor. I was thinking of Tom Hardy. I don't know why, but I was thinking of the actual character that's gonna be
Oh,
Venom.
Eddie Brock. Yeah, I'm
Eddie
sure
Brock.
it's gonna be the Eddie Brock version. I don't know why they would jump to another version.
So like
Right.
maybe he appeals to Eddie Brock in a way, and maybe goes to his better side, and then he joins sides, and maybe Carnage is our actual main enemy. Who knows? But
Or hear me
or-
out. Because usually what would happen is, obviously when you got Venom, then obviously he goes to Carnage. But now there's a bunch of symbiotes after Carnage. You got Hybrid, you
yeah.
got Scream, you have a
Toxin,
whole bunch Toxin, a whole bunch of different minor symbiotes.
Riot.
Whereas like they could also, Riot
Yeah.
too. They could
They're
also
all-
just
They're all spawns of each other, though. They're all spawns of one another. So you got to go down the line because it goes from like Venom to Carnage to
right.
Toxin.
That's what I'm saying. So
to,
let's say like you beat
Anti-Venom.
Carnage. Let's say you beat Carnage or whatever. Now that could give them room to like have
Yeah.
the rest of them spawns in a sense,
I think if they're gonna jump into that whole symbiote stuff, because there's a whole Planet of the Symbiotes comic line in the comics with a whole like god null god of the
Yep,
symbiotes
Null,
and
yep.
explains this whole stuff. If they're gonna do that, I think they would probably save that for it its own
Venom's
Venom.
own game,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Mhm.
That's more stuff I feel like they should do in like a Venom's own game type of stuff. But that'd be really cool. I mean, because that whole storyline I think it's really beloved and it's really interesting.
Yo,
But not
imagine-
everyone knows about it. Like the whole Planet of the Symbiote stuff is cool, and it's
Yeah.
a fairly Spider-Man free Venom storyline.
But imagine being able to fight Null and like that would be
It'd be
crazy.
crazy, yeah, it'd be nuts.
I mean, there's so much there for
Yeah.
it. And it's already goes into the next topic that I had, which was what role is Venom going to play not only in this game but in the future of the Insomniverse. Knowing that he's put into this universe changes the entire dynamic of what Insomniac can do, and it's again up to what rights they have access to. What they're doing in terms of not just the world building, but the character design, the graphics, right? The
Oh my
level of
god, yeah.
graphics that they're incorporating into these games, how realistic everything is, how AAA Marvel movie, these are better than Marvel movies. I'm gonna go out
fluid.
on a limb and agree with you, Brendan, that these are better than Marvel movies
Yeah.
in certain points.
More cinematic. They're more cinematic. That's what I would say. You know what I mean?
I
Mhm.
mean, you look back and I'd say maybe some of the Avengers movies, but in terms of the set pieces, in terms of playability, right? You can actually play through the cinematic moments as opposed to just watching them.
Yeah.
They have a chance here to make something revolutionary for years to come. And whoever got that deal at Insomniac to do Marvel games, Pay that man for the rest of his life.
Yeah, good on
right?
him.
Because the fact that this could have gone to anyone, right? This could have gone to Square Enix, and it would have went down the drain.
Yeah, because Avengers
Oh, yeah,
sucked.
terribly. Yes,
Avengers is a
horrible.
horrendous release because of the fact that they decided to go with the live action, the live
Game of the live service.
live service
Yeah.
game. So they could have done this to Spider-Man. You saw what they did to Spider-Man in that game. His swinging
Yeah.
is horrible than Spider-Man in Fortnite. Like it's
Yeah.
atrocious, right? So you're happy that Insomniac got their hands on this. Maybe if Sucker Punch could have had their hand at a Marvel superhero, I could see that as well because they've already dabbled in Infamous and
Yeah.
they've handled the
Yeah,
superhero line, right? They
it'll
really
definitely be more gritty.
yeah, they could definitely pull a more gritty type of line, right?
Oh, wait, so I'm sorry to cut you off again, but they could do Venom.
They could
Yeah.
do Venom. They could do Venom, but I could see them if they could handle more of a different because already Venom is already included in the Insomniverse. But if Sucker Punch could get their hand on a superhero, I mean, you already have the DC universe having their games, so you can't put Rocksteady on it, right? And Rocksteady.
How you question for you? How you feel about Moon Knight though?
Oh, that show's gonna be amazing.
I can't wait for that show, man.
Either Moon Knight, either Sucker Punch could do Moon Knight or Daredevil.
Oof.
Oh yeah, for like a video
Daredevil
game,
would
yeah.
be amazing.
Yeah, that'd be pretty
Daredevil would
sick.
be amazing.
I think Daredevil
I
would
could see
be
someone
pretty
take on
sick.
Deadpool. I mean, Deadpool has had video games for a very long time.
Yeah, there
And
has been.
some of them have hit, some of them haven't. But you would want to see like an Insomniac level production on a Deadpool game as well. Then again, we're branching out into all types of heroes and what companies could take, right? Because Insomniac doesn't want to do this alone, right? They're
Right.
talented,
Yeah.
they're doing it, but they don't want to do this alone. But they
They can
also
only do so much at one time.
exactly. The fact that they're doing Wolverine along with Spider-Man 2, and then they released Miles Morales and Spider-Man itself, and then they did the remaster of Spider-Man. I mean, this team, and then sorry, Insomniac, sorry for not including Ratchet and Clank, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
Yeah.
they also are
forgot about Ratchet and Clank.
they're such a powerhouse gaming developer. We don't know how they're doing this, right? But they're obviously masters at juggling different projects. But right now they're focused full on Spider-Man 2. So, that all that stuff is nice and it could happen in the future, but you're just happy that Insomniac started this.
Yeah, and real quick, one quick thing about Venom I want to say. I just thought of this actually. If the very fact that Venom has the spider symbol on his chest means that he must have met Spider-Man before, because at least in the comics, and this is why he doesn't have the spider symbol on his chest in the Tom Hardy Venom movies, is like in the comics, the only reason he has that symbol is because before he ever met Eddie, he obviously bonded to Spider-Man just like he did in the Sam Raimi movie. So and when he bonded to Spider-Man, he got that symbol on his chest, and then when he left Spider-Man and then he attached to Eddie, he kept that symbol, but it kind of got larger and more distorted. So that's why. So obviously, if he has that symbol in the games, it means obviously
He had
Peter
to have
must.
history with Peter.
Yeah, like Peter must have gone through. He must have obviously gone.
Taking the image.
Yeah, he must have already been Black Suit, Venom Spider-Man. So
So now that you say that, that might be like a plot twist or something where it comes up later on, maybe.
yeah.
But that really covers, I guess, what role Venom could play. Obviously, it's going to be a huge role. I don't think that it's only going to be a villain role. I think it's going to be an anti-hero role in a way. There's too much depth to the story writing and storytelling of Insomniac to just keep him as a villain. I think there's just too much there with him maybe teaming up or coming alongside Spider-Man. But I did not know that, Brendan. I completely forgot about the fact that for Venom to have the spider symbol on his suit would have to mean that he had interacted with Peter at some point in the past.
Yeah.
So, we move on. With Wolverine on the horizon, does he have a cameo appearance in Spider-Man 2? If he does have a cameo appearance, it might be sort of like a post-credit scene, the way that they showed Miles Morales found his powers at the end of part 1, right?
Yeah.
I do see a post-credit scene involved with Wolverine in a way, but then again, there have been rumblings that Wolverine isn't going to be, like, his games aren't going to be involved with the Spider-Man games. Even though they may be in the same universe, they're supposed to be two separate stories in a way. Obviously, one being rated T and the other one going full-on rated M. is obviously a difference in philosophy in a way and crowd that you're reaching out to. So I could see them maybe keeping them separate, but I would love for Wolverine to have some type of cameo, whether it be in a Venom standalone game or in the end of Spider-Man 2, or maybe even like a regular interaction, like a phone call or something, or you hear about, oh, there's this Wolverine character, there's this guy with metal claws that's running around killing people, something like that, right? Like a difference would be pretty cool. What would you guys think about that if he was to show up?
Yeah.
But my whole thing is with Wolverine. Like if he normally when Wolverine pops up in like someone else's story, at least this is like the common conception. He's always like hunting somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I feel like if he was to make like a cameo in Spider-Man, he's probably hunting somebody that just so happens to be in the city.
Story will be told throughout the city, maybe of like,
or
over there while you're over here,
Yeah, or like he's just passing through the city, finding somebody because Wolverine has a strong sense of smell. So it's like maybe he caught on to a scent.
He's not restricted to New York at all. He's worldwide.
Yeah,
right?
he's everywhere. Yeah.
I mean, he's from Canada, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So maybe like if he does do a cameo, they could do something like that where he's being, hunting his bounty, or maybe he's just passing through, or who knows?
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of things you could do with Wolverine.
All right, so actually, I did want to mention this. I kind of glossed over it. The swing mechanics in the first game, right? We talked about swinging through the city and swinging through Central Park, but obviously there's a lot of anticipation over what the swing mechanics could be like in Spider-Man 2. Miles Morales really developed on it, right? They added a lot more, I guess, wild movements, because that's Miles's swing style.
Yeah.
And Peter's more he's acrobatic, but he's more controlled and he's more efficient in his movements. What could we see maybe improve on the next version? Do we see more interaction with like fire escapes and things like that? More interaction with the buildings? Do we go into buildings?
Yeah, I would like to see some stuff like that, or like more like even like damage, you know what I mean? To like, like more like,
Environment damage?
like destructible environments. Yeah. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Not just in cinematics, but actually in the environment that you're fighting. Even though they did do that, but it was more on set pieces. It wasn't really the city.
Yeah.
I believe it was your fight with Electro in the bank, right? Or Shocker. I keep calling him Electro. It's Shocker.
They're similar.
Yeah, they are similar in the games, but yeah, it's Shocker in the bank. He kind of like destroys the whole bank around you, the chandelier kind of, but you can tell it's a pre-rendered set piece. It's not, there's no destructible environments really in the city.
Right.
So I would like to see them improve on that. I would like even an Assassin's Creed kind of mechanic. If you guys remember from the older Assassin's Creed game, there were sections where you could run through a window and a cinematic would come out as you run through the apartment, right? And then you come out the other side. That would be something that would be insanely cool if you could just like, swing through any window and you walk in on the grandma, she screams, she's like, ah, and you're like, sorry, like in typical Spider-Man fashion. That would be so cool, man. I would love to see something like that.
Right, that'd be insane. I think they really got the animations done really well too, especially for what you said with their respective like styles, how like Peter is more controlled when he swings, and then since Miles is a teen, he'll be swinging and he'll just pull out his phone, put on a song or something or a text, and then he'll just swing off, So it's dope that games are starting to incorporate that way more.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what they did just now with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and you see the detail that they were able to add to a game that was from the ground up for PS5. The destructible environments in that, if they could even include an inkling of that into the open world of Spider-Man, we're talking real Game of the Year material here, and we're talking pushing the envelope forward even further than what that was, because Rift Apart was beautiful. The ray tracing in that was almost thought to be impossible to be that effective on PS5. Even though PS5 had ray tracing, it wasn't supposed to be that good looking. It's going to be really cool to see what they come up with when it finally comes out. We are talking a few years away. It's still far. It's not close. We're definitely going to let them take their time. I'm sure Elden Ring will take up a lot of the time for people until then.
Yeah.
You got things like GTA 6 on the horizon. Who knows how far away that is, but you got a lot of hope for the future of gaming, and you're happy Insomniac has Marvel in their hands. And I think that pretty much covers everything we wanted to talk about when it comes to Spider-Man. I mean, there's obviously a lot more, but for now, I feel like everything's speculation. so we can kind of
Yeah.
just go with what we know and what we think about. And I'd like to thank you guys for listening in. I got Brendan and Show, aka Johnny Two Times, on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And, once again, drop a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe. We got cinematic videos coming out weekly for Elden Ring. We got Horizon Forbidden West and Dying Light videos coming out, and weekly podcasts for you guys. So drop the like if you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think, and thank you guys for listening. Peace.
Thank you. Ready to try out my app?
Yeah, man. Let's do this.
I'm connected to your analytics. Let's test drive this baby.
All right.
I can see everything you see. How are you not puking all the time? Lots of practice.